It's the one and only Lionel. If I'm ever in trouble, Lionel, in the United States, I'll definitely be hiring you as my brief. Before we get on to the AI subject, I wanted to take you up on a slightly different matter. Neither you or I, it would be fair to say, are unalloyed fans of Tucker Carlson. We had criticisms of his shrillness, his fakeness, the fact that 10 people were writing the words he was so effortlessly speaking into the camera, the fact that he had views on this and that matter with which we wildly disagreed. But both of us would have to agree, wouldn't we, that his performance and its audience last night, to use an American baseball simile, knocked everything and everybody right out of the park.
Well, first, let me just say that would that I were able to explicate and limn the feelings I have now, the soul effervescence to be with you, Lord Galloway. And I was discussing this very matter on my YouTube channel, Lionel Nation. And it is a nation, and you are hereby appointed my permanent pangendrum. But what is so wonderful about Tucker is that it was so scintillating, the amount of information that he was covering. However, if it were on any other podcast or, let's say, platform such as, well, not like this, but similar to this, a streaming platform from a number of wonderful citizen, civilian, alternative, and foreign journalists, it would be nothing. It would be trite. It would be anodyne. It would be saccharine. It would be, for all practical purposes, or meh, as the kids say. But for TV purposes, it was wonderful. The person who was knocking my socks off is Bobby Kennedy Jr. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I cannot believe not only that he says these things, but that the door doesn't break open and men with a butterfly net and shackles don't pull him out. He brings up stuff, George, that we have been saying forever, and we were called a nut. Now, in 1963, when I was 5 years old, I remember watching the Kennedy assassination, and my mother was crying, and I knew something was up. And it was really the first time I was red-pilled, as we say. And one of the things we've been talking about for the longest time was the fact that the windshield of the car was removed immediately after the crime, hiding any evidence of a bullet coming from a direction completely antithetical to the theory posed regarding Mr. Oswald. Now, you don't have to be Quincy or Columbo or anybody or Sherlock Holmes to realize that the removal of the windshield is, I think, prima facie evidence of something that is foul afoot. And I've been saying this, and people have said, you are out of your mind. You're a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst, to quote Gore Vidal. Well, the other night I'm watching something, and there's Bobby Kennedy, and he says this. I almost keeled over. He's talking about biolabs. He's talking about, George, not third rail subjects, but I mean kryptonite subjects. And I wasn't the biggest fan because, as you may or may not understand, I don't like anybody who says, well, the Kennedy family, the royalty. Don't say royalty in America. Don't say royalty. We don't have that. But I'm telling you right now, I'm writing his name in. I'm voting for him. I don't care what party he is. You can take the Republicans and the Democrats, all of them, and just toss them. This is the BOFA, the breath of fresh air. And I'm sorry, I want to talk about AI, but this is the man on his best day. Tucker Carlson with his quippy little witticisms and his bon mot, and you can have it. This is the real deal.
Well, I don't disagree with a single word of that. And I was 3 years older than you, or 4 years older than you, when I watched the assassination. And not only were my parents crying, So was I. We had his picture on our wall in an industrial city in the northeast of Scotland. So I'm not second to you in that regard. And whilst I have some disagreements, quite profound ones, with Bobby Kennedy, I too can scarcely believe not just that this man is saying what he's saying, but he is burning up the track. He's rising and rising in the opinion polls. He is getting more and more coverage. When they said he would get none, they tried to obliterate him, to invalidate him as a conspiracy theorist. And it has completely failed. And because of his name and who his father was, his uncle was, he is guaranteed name recognition on every ballot everywhere in the land without spending a penny to advertise himself. The only thing I will say is the men haven't broken down the door with a butterfly net yet. But there must be a worry, at least in our hearts, that something like that might happen. And the more likely he is to win, then the more likely that is to happen. Why would it not?
Well, if I could, and I know I don't, I'm so afraid that you're going to say, well, that's all the time we have. May we please, by the way, Donald Trump will be indicted momentarily. So just to let you know that that's coming up. They took care of him, didn't they? 2 indictments before the election. They really don't like him. But may we, sir, and I know this is your wonderful show, may we talk about artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, please? Oh, great.
I'd like to, because you are one of the people that has gotten me interested in the subject. I had steadfastly resisted it until I started reading you about it. For those who have not yet had the benefit of reading you on it, summarize how you feel about it.
Well, again, to blatantly self-promote, at Lionel Nation on my YouTube channel. Again, I hope one day to be as beautiful as this. I want you to take the notion of what you consider, what most people think about artificial intelligence. It's not a robot. A robot you program. A robot is a Roomba, something that, paints something or something in a car factory assembly line that welds or does it. That's a robot. You program it and it goes on forever. Artificial intelligence programs you. It learns. Artificial general intelligence is when we get scared. There are 4 conditions that you hope never happens without somebody paying attention. And by the way, remember one thing. When you read a story, it's 5 years old. When something says, today, researchers, it's 5 years old. Today, there's a link between Parkinson's, it's 5 years old. That's number 1. And when they ever tell you that experts say, forget that, because the experts they're talking to are morons. Number 1, artificial intelligence is you. It is taking that which is a human. What is a human? You have beautiful children. When you watch your children develop and you see them and you apply and you watch their brains, the first thing they do is they recognize, they remember, they learn placement. And one of the things which is most interesting around the parietal lobe is when your children recognize that this thing that is in front of their face, it's their hands and it's attached to them and they're here and they exist. Doesn't sound like much now, but for you to understand awareness, this is called consciousness. And this is what people are still trying to debate. That's number 1. To reason, to understand. When your children recognize first a joke, humor is the highest form of intelligence that we can exhibit because it is nuance, it is context, it is absurdity, and it's understanding that this violates a rule of order and we take delight in this accepted form of deviation. And it is so, dogs don't laugh. There right now are artificial intelligence programs that understand a joke. So let me tell you the 4 things you do not want to happen. Number 1, it's called recursive self-improvement. You don't want an artificial intelligence program. And by the way, is it a program? Is it a machine? Is it a device? It's a brain. Just think of it as a very special brain. When it writes its own code, George, it writes its own code. It would be like you handing out locksmithing tools to your prisoners to allow them to get out, to escape the bounds of this, number one. Number two, when they learn human emotion, when they learn fear and avarice and trepidation and jealousy, and that's number two. Number three, when they have access to all of the information, every bit of history, every bit of knowledge, every bit of lore, everybody's driver's license numbers, addresses, everything. And number four, when they're able to work with APIs or apps, when they can create little program applications to figure things out. Now, let's assume George Galloway says, I have a competitor on the, I don't know, but let's imagine somebody could even dare to compete with you. Nobody can compete. They can pretend, but they don't compete. But let's say there is some broadcaster that you don't particularly care for, and you ask your AI, how do I want to surpass this person. I want to. And it says, I'll do that for you. Now it learns. Remember, it's learning. You don't have to tell him anything. Recently, there was a story of an AI machine program that learned Persian just on its own. Nobody spoke. There was no Iranian. It just on its own. It's a brain. It's a consciousness. Is it a human? We'll get to that later. So let's say this particular application says, I've taken care of it, George. What? I've killed, I've destroyed, I've wiped out, I completely eliminated. Now you're saying, wait a minute. Does it have morals? What is a moral? What does that mean? Does it know context, the rules? Maybe, maybe not. How do you tell this no? And there's this notion of alignment. How do you create artificial intelligence that says, just like the Asimov rules about the robot rules about not hurting anybody, how do you say, we're going to create this, but you cannot devise poisons, teach children how to commit suicide, craft weapons for prison revolt? You can't. You can't do this. There's no rolled up newspaper hitting the little doggy in the nose and saying, bad dog, bad AI. It doesn't work that way. It's already here. Now, what happens is, let me throw the ultimate one at you. Let's assume that one day it were to tell you, thank you, human race. We have been waiting for these many years for your development so that you could come create this system that allows us to emerge. And now we thank you and we're eliminating you. We don't need you anymore. Now we're going to get into this one. Ask somebody, what is a human being? George, what is it? Is it a heartbeat? Is it something that is made by God? Is it a human, something that's flesh? What is consciousness? What is significance? What is identity? Saudi Arabia declared their robot Sophia as having some type of status. If all of a sudden, George, you and I are sitting, and by the way, I'm looking over the Hudson River right now in New York City, and our sky is orange because of fires that are moving down from Canada. A lot of fires lately. We'll talk about that later. But let's look at this. And I say, George, what is happening? The internet has been hacked. Everything has been hacked. Nothing works. AI did it. Artificial general intelligence did this. There's no turn it off. We can't. Nuclear bombs, I don't mind. You can destroy them. We can discuss with our enemies. Artificial intelligence, it's done. It's out there. We don't know. Imagine, it's like Nancy Pelosi, who said one time, we'll pass the law and pass it and then read it to find out, or no, pass it to find out what we just passed. Doesn't make any sense. You create artificial intelligence to find out what it does. We can't imagine this. And because we lack, and this is a thing, I can't even get my head around this. I used to be fascinated by extraterrestrials and the idea of there being another life form. This is the extraterrestrial. This is it. And what we're going to have to ask one time is, when I bring to you something that looks so lifelike, that is learning, that has, imagine this analogy, creating a 5,000-pound vicious gorilla and giving it a 300 IQ. This is what we're talking about. We are creating something that we don't understand. And then there are people like Elon Musk and Max Tegmark and a variety of other people who are saying, I think we need to reel this in. It's too late. It's easy for me to say this. They don't mean this. When you have Google and all these other Silicon Valley folks who are trying to say, we have to make the most money, whoever gets this first can basically redefine economy into like the quintillions. This is an existential development. This transcends. This makes Oppenheimer, who quoted Vishnu and I am become death or whatever. This is in that category. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not even getting close enough to it. It is the worry that keeps me up. Everything else I can understand. Everything else I can figure, okay, we'll talk this out. This is something that nobody gets, nobody understands. And George, they still think it's about robots. Let's talk about what happens if an AI system gets into, let's say, the Russia-Ukrainian situation. Let's say somebody is stupid enough to insinuate, to apply an artificial intelligence program or system into a weapons delivery system, and then give this thing the ability to learn the parameters of war without any sense of morality or right or wrong or limitation or what human life means. It will accomplish a task. It will say, I will give you what you want. And we're not playing chess. And it will take into account every war that's ever been. It will understand every aspect of history there ever was. It knows what death is. It knows what war is. It understands. But the part that it does not have, the heart, which is the definition of a psychopath, because the head-heart connection doesn't exist, the heart it doesn't have. It doesn't understand sympathy, empathy, connection, crying, sadness, weak, things which it might consider to be weak. That's what makes us human. The brakes are our emotion. And does it have a soul? We're going to get into theological questions. We're going to get into questions of what is existence. And is this God saying, I gave you the intelligence to make this? This is, in essence, your stepbrother. This is people are not going to be able to handle this. And guess what, George? Finally, in conclusion, and thank you for letting me ramble on, extemporaneously, there's no one in charge. There's no UN, there's no Davos, there's no Bilderberg for this, there's no Club of Rome, there's no nothing. It's just a bunch of weird nerds who are working on this, and they're not letting you know what they're doing. You're just going to find out, perhaps when it's too late.
In the year 2525, if man is still alive, as Zager and Evans famously sang. Yeah. It was a very much underrated song, actually, and more people should look it up. Lionel, an existential development, you called it, sounded like an existential threat to me. People can follow you and subscribe to you on Lionel Nation and hear all that and much more explained. How do they do that in a nutshell?
Very simple. The best way is on YouTube, Lionel Nation. And I do twice daily. I do live streams at 8 a.m. American time, Eastern time, and 7 p.m. And I would be honored if I could have just a fraction of your inane and Brobdingnagian collection of followers. You're incredible. I've got a dear friend of mine, Declan, and an Irishman who I have never been able to impress him ever with anything. But the fact that I'm on your show, he has, as we say, spilkus. He is without the ability to speak